runs LENSCRATCH. It's a photo blog, that's great. And I'm excited to have her here because she's been covering my work for many years. I think she's done 3 or 4 different posts over the past 7 or 8 years, and I'm happy to finally meet her in person today.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to be able to have a conversation with Kevin, an artist that I greatly admire. And we connected additionally in an unfortunate way when I was doing a fundraiser for photographers who had lost everything in LA in conjunction with Photo LA. And Kevin was one of the photographers on our list, and it was really devastating to learn his story, which he will share in our conversation. I want to tell you a little bit about Kevin. He's an American artist based in Los Angeles who works across photography, video, and public installations. His work explores humanity's relationship with the 5 classical elements: earth, air, fire, water, and ether, using a systems-based approach to examine environmental themes and the impact of technology. He challenges viewers to reflect on the sustainability of modern living and the psychological and practical struggles associated with environmental degradation. He earned an MFA in photography from the School of Visual Arts in New York. He's gone on to have many solo exhibitions in Los Angeles, in particular at the Copacan Gallery, and including also, he is housed in major public collections, including the Guggenheim Museum, the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, and the Los Angeles County Art Museum. His focus on climate change, environmental degradation, and human survival have garnered critical attention with features in Time, The Atlantic, The New Yorker, and Harper's. I've been following Kevin's work for years, and beyond his photographs, I was lucky enough to be in New York City when Kevin's amazing installation was on display. I'll never forget standing on the High Line and watching an empty high-rise pulsating to the light of every room having a TV on with the same show running. And it was spectacular, I have to say, and it was a brilliant way to think about light. So first, Kevin, I want to thank you for not only your artistry, but for putting yourself in dangerous situations to give us firsthand visuals of fire and its destruction. Kevin not only is an artist who works with fire, but he works for a lot of publications shooting fire. The events of January 7th were horrific for our city, but your personal story of not only documenting the city as it burned, but your own home is profound. Can you walk us through that day?
Sure. It definitely was a crazy day, waking up to no power in Altadena, at least in my house, and then at 10:30 going to the Palisades, where I spent most of the day documenting that, only to get a call from my wife, Bridget, at, oh no, it went out again. My wife, Bridget, at around 6:30, and seeing that there's another fire back in Altadena and having to rush across town, having spent, I think I've probably been on maybe 30 or 40 different wildfires in the past few years, and I would think that having one in my own neighborhood would prepare me better for gathering my stuff and getting ready to go, but I just fell into the same panic everyone else does, and I evacuated my family. We evacuated twice, first to a friend's house, and then we went back to our house because maybe some of you have heard that one part of Altadena never got any alerts, and that's where we were. But we finally evacuated for the last time around 5:30 a.m. And after getting my family to safety, I felt compelled to come back. You know, that draw between being a documentarian of this moment, I needed to go back. And when I got back, my house was already starting to be on fire, and I tried to put it out. And then I saw that my car was about to get consumed, so I decided it'd better to have a car. And I went around the neighborhood some more, and then when I came back to my house, it was fully on fire, and only a few short hours later, it was completely gone. So, and at that point, I kind of had stopped. I thought I was going to be documenting more afterwards, but I just couldn't go back.
Yeah.
I did find a way to go back a little bit about 2 months later, but
Yeah.
that's a very quick version of that day.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Since you've had this sort of obsession with fire and light and fireworks, can you tell us a little bit about your growing up and what sparked your interest in light and fire?
Well, my mom actually lost her house in the 1961 Bel Air fire, and she would always talk about like before and after the fire. It was as a major point in her life. So I've been kind of aware of that, you know, from a very young age. And also my mom, in a very characteristic way, I grew up in Colorado where they have like safe and sane fireworks laws, but in Wyoming they don't. So she would drive us across the border to fill up the back of the car with illegal fireworks, and we would bring them back and set them off all over the neighborhood, which so I'm gonna definitely have like an interest in fire, both as something that's in our control and also out of our control. That duality is what ultimately interests me, but from a young age, I got interested in it from a pyromaniac kind of point of view.
You were one of those teenagers.
Yes, well, not even a teenager before that.
One of the most interesting nuggets that I learned, I did an interview with Kevin on LENSCRATCH, is that during the last papal conclave, now we're all really into the conclave after the movie, in 2013, you became fascinated with the idea of using smoke signals to communicate something so momentous. The color of smoke indicating whether a new pope had been chosen. And that led you to the subject of your book. Do you want to
Yeah, that's
share?
right. So I became interested in, you know, how do they release smoke in the middle of Rome? How is it toxic? Is it a lot of smoke? You know, I hadn't seen it before 2013. And I started doing research on the internet, and I kept on seeing this guy's name in these smoke forums. There actually exists, it's a very like small portion of the fireworks community. And I called him, his phone number was there, and I called him up and he answered the phone, and an hour later I got off and he agreed to send me some of this material. And lucky for me, I was about to embark on a artist residency in Omaha, Nebraska, where I had access to a big 10,000 square foot sculpture studio. And they were perfectly happy to let me light off these smoke, they're not smoke bombs, but they're like little teaspoon size portions of a 2-part chemical that's only active once it's mixed together. And I wanted to photograph more and more, and I got to know him, and I eventually went to his property, which is on a rural farm in southern Minnesota. And like everything there is fireworks, it's pyro. Like every horizontal surface is littered with material. There's holes in his yard from explosions that he's done. He's just making fireworks, living and breathing fireworks. And after I was working with the smoke, he convinced me to try and do these little small explosions. These are with magnesium. And I eventually ended up publishing a lot of, I'm not really a documentarian other than through the natural landscape. I don't do like personal documentary, but this guy was so interesting that I made an exception with him. And after going there several times, I was asked to publish some of the work in Popular Science magazine, and with his permission, I did that. And as soon as that was published, it landed on the desk of an agent at the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms in Chicago. And they thought they had found a Unabomber kind of character, and they came with 100 agents from all over the Midwest to his house at 7 a.m. and like he was like naked in bed. It was just like this horrific thing, and he ends up spending 2.5 years in prison. And so for my first documentary, like that's a pretty heavy kind of weight to have on you, to have a real world impact with the photos that you take on someone's life like that. And I mean, I felt bad. I also know it wasn't entirely my fault. Like, you know, he's doing the work. It turns out like there was something he was doing that wasn't exactly legal, but he thought it was legal because he'd been doing it before. And anyway, he wasn't up to speed on the latest advisories from the ATF advisories. And yeah, so so the book, The Wizard of Awe, The Wizard of Awe is the name of the article in the Popular Science, and it just felt like the right thing to choose for the book. And he, rather than being mad at me, people often ask me that, he actually says this whole experience saved his life because he was headed down a path of bad choices.
Did he have a family, or did he live alone?
Yeah, he has a wife who works with him, and he has 2 boys. And at the time, these photos were shot between 2015 and 2019 on his farm. And the boys at the time were 13 and like 16, I think. So teenage boys who were also, you know, getting up to similar things around the property.
Wow. Originally, you had created 3 projects around working with him over a number of years. How does the book reflect the combined projects and the addition of the epilogue, which is him going to jail, of the events that took place after the Popular Science article? How did that contribute to the book and to the storytelling?
Yeah, well, I wanted to include both. I mean, I feel like that's the natural way to tell the story. But it was very difficult to find a way, and the Eriskay Collection, their designer, did a great job of trying to find a way to punctuate the story of Ken's story and my story with him by using these photographs throughout it. It starts off with some of the early smoke images, and then this is actually my favorite spread in the whole book, but it has one of my art photographs on the right and then the portrait on the left. I was actually about to publish the book with a different publisher, and we were working on the final design, and then Ken got arrested. So I was like, okay, wait, let's see what happens. You know, this is definitely like another like important part of the story to tell. And by the time that he had been released from prison, the publisher was no longer interested because it was not like strictly a photo book. It was much more like, it had all this ephemera, and I wanted to include the local press in Minnesota, like the Star Tribune in Minneapolis, like made him out to be like a criminal, like a really dangerous person. And I wanted to try and include some of those press clippings, but I didn't know how to organize it all together. And I'm really thankful to Carl at Eriskay Collection for finding a way to integrate that all in a way that works visually and story-wise.
Can you tell us a little bit about finding your publisher and your book designer, or did they come together?
The Eriskay Collection, they mostly do their own designs in-house. It's actually 2 different designers who also publish the photo books. I had written several different American publishers and elsewhere, and the Eriskay seemed to be the most interested. It really just fits in with their kind of quirky corral of artists and books. They say that they publish books like in the combination of research, photography, and writing.
And where are they located?
They're located in the Netherlands, in Breda, Netherlands.
So did you have to travel for the printing? Or
I did. I probably didn't have to go on press, but because there was so many dark images, it just seemed like the right thing to do. The book was printed in Belgium. So here's some different.
So this is all new material that you added for the book that wasn't in the 3 stories or not? In
The
the
book
3.
before was going to be mostly just about more of a documentary about him, and there wasn't really going to include my work, the images, the series I made from his materials.
Yeah. I don't know if you've had a chance to see the cover of his book. And the lighting here isn't that great, but it's really spectacular, especially with those copper tendrils. Do you want to
foil.
speak to the cover and how that came about?
Yeah, Carl had wanted to use another photograph of the smoke with white, but it had just been used on another book, and we were looking for another image to use, and this one seemed to be really nice, the one that's up right now. And his idea to add the foil just really made it sink.
Yeah, it's really dynamic. I also am wondering your thoughts on having a book come out on fire right at the time where you lost your home, and sort of the irony of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to get more ironic than that, right?
Yeah.
I was actually installing, I had an exhibition and a book launch of this book at These Days. It's a gallery bookstore downtown LA. And Stephen, one of the owners, was asking me the day before the fires, this exact thing, like, how do you do both of these things? And I was trying to explain it to him, and the next day I was on the fire, and I could have never imagined that there would be so much fire in my life.
Yeah.
I don't know. I used to say that I would prefer to go to the fires rather than have to come to me. I actually had bought a house in Tahunga in 2017, and about a week after I moved in, the La Tuna fire came about 100 yards away. So I had moved to Altadena. I mean, I live my property is about 3 miles from the Chaparral, and we moved there to get away from that danger, and it still found us. So I don't know. And also there was a fire a couple of years ago that started at my high school in Colorado and basically burned past both of my childhood homes.
Wow.
So it's kind of like, is the fire chasing me, or am I chasing the fire?
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
So we kind of
don't
need to
really
stay
know.
away from you.
Maybe. Yeah.
Or not live near you.
Yeah. So these are just a couple examples of wildfires I've photographed, and this is the La Tuna fire from my house in Tahunga.
So how did you get started in sort of having this niche of photographing fire?
Well, I think I came to fire photographically through
Your own?
the light. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at my work, I started photographing a lot of things at night using existing and some sort of introduced light, whether it be film production that happened to be nearby, or lights from airplanes flying overhead, or boats in Paris, tourist boats with bright lights along the side, and bringing my own lights eventually. Fire just has that glow, and I think I sort of got interested in it photographically from that point of view. And then when this fire almost destroyed everything that I owned, I kind of doubled down on wanting to photograph wildfires. And so from 2018 until now, I've been pretty much every time there's a fire, at least in Southern California, I go.
Wow. We discussed a little bit in our interview about what's next. It would be great to hear kind of how you're processing this and then making it into art.
So this was a photograph I made in the Palisades that appeared in the New York Times the day after the fire. And that was kind of the last thing. I mean, I had to just deal with the whole thing emotionally, and from a personal point of view, it just, I stopped. And then this happened. This was a week after the fire. I think everyone had seen enough fire, and the Hollywood Reporter wanted to use something else to punctuate that moment. And seeing one of my photographs that first got me into this, I mean, I always thought of these as representing smoke columns above wildfires anyway, and just to have it represent the fire that took my house was just really hard to comprehend. But I'm glad that they had the foresight to use it. And then I took this one photograph in the neighborhood after the fire, and you know, the Altadena phoenix of the peacocks, the wild peacocks that live there.
Is that your house? Or
No, it's just it's further up towards the top of Altadena, but and then I stopped for about 2 months, and I had there was nothing at our property that was salvageable, but I did have a big flat file that I wanted to get into, and I tried on my own several times, and eventually we got the Samaritans purse, which is a Christian organization that deploys to disaster zones to help people try and recover things and move on with their life. And they helped me open my large flat file. And in it we found this cover of Wired magazine. I don't know if you can make it out there, but it says Wired across the top. And this is like what really made me realize that I could be documenting something in the wake of the fire, because this Wired was actually on the cover like that. So the idea that now the charred remains of this image existed in its sort of in a meta form of its original thing, I was really blown away. And I decided I wanted to photograph that like how I photographed the smoke originally, in a studio with strobe lights, trying to capture some of those ripples in the same way. I also found this computer in there, which is kind of interesting. And then once I did this, it had been a couple of months since I had spent any time there, and things were starting to grow. It was getting towards spring, so I started photographing flowers and green coming back through the debris, and that's what I've been working on most recently.
How active are the sites now? Is it just completely quiet, or are people coming in? Are there, are tourists coming in to look, or what's?
There's a few looky-loos, I guess, but mostly it's the Army Corps of Engineers is like really working fast to remove debris. I actually got the call just yesterday. They wanted to clear my house, but I pushed them off to next week so I could. I'm running the table for Eriskay this weekend because I was going to host them at my house, but that's not happening now. So, yeah, it's very busy up there. Like, it's just as busy with traffic and stuff. Big trucks. I'm sure you've seen the trucks coming down if you're around Pasadena at all, full of debris.
And you think you'll rebuild, or you think?
We're thinking about it. Yeah, it's a lot to process.
Yeah. And a lot of rigmarole to go through. Yeah. So, well, I'd open this up to any questions. Ian?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to ask this. It sounds like an agony column question. I'm currently judging a large photography competition, and I'm seeing entries of people who didn't live in the area, somehow got access a week or so after the fire, and they're just photographing people's houses. For me, it seems a little bit voyeuristic rather than documentary. How would you feel if you saw your house winning a competition, a photography competition?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. Like, I mean, I was like, I need to stop photographing this and let somebody else document this. So I'm just happy that people were up there doing it, because I don't think, as a homeowner, I couldn't be there. So I think it's important that they're there, but I don't know how I would feel if it was my. I mean, I guess in a way, I guess I would think it's not my house because it's already destroyed. It's become something else. But I think I see what you mean. It does feel like it's maybe not their place to do that.
I certainly felt uncomfortable looking
Yeah.
at it. No, if it'd been someone, photographer who'd been in the area who's personally affected, I may have felt differently, or if there'd been a more documentary format to it.
Yeah.
With someone trying to produce beautiful photographs somehow of a disaster, and it felt uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, maybe if it's like, I mean, that's just the first thing they've done is just, but if they've had like a history of making work like that, it might,
Thanks for the advice.
yeah, sure.
Anyone else have a question?
I've never really like embedded with anyone. I do. I've done a lot of editorial work over the years, so I do have a press pass, and that like gets me into the fires. Um, these days, I try to stay further away from them. Like I feel like, I mean, I'm not really a news photographer, and I think that, I mean, these two fires were an exception, but I've been trying to photograph the fire like more in a larger landscape. So, I mean, I think there's plenty of ways to make photographs of fire without getting super close and getting in harm's way yourself.
So what was your feeling when you were photographing the Palisades, which was not where you lived, versus photographing the neighborhood where you lived? Was it just way more devastating to you?
I mean, I think I was in shock. Like, I mean, it felt the same, but I just knew the whole neighborhood. Like, oh, that's so-and-so's house. Oh, that's the hardware store. You know, like,
Yeah.
I think it took me a couple of weeks to even like realize that what had happened, you know. I kept on going back to the house and thinking what's going to be there. I mean, it is different when it's yours.
Yeah.
There's no way around that. But you know, any fire, I always feel for the people and community in which I find them.
Hi, first, thank you so much for your work that you're doing. I'm really proud about your wonderful. So I'm also a photographer in work. I don't cover a lot of fires, but I first wanted to just react to the question that was on the table earlier about, you know, photographing this difficult situation. And I can say personally that when I've photographed a lot of grief. And I will often get, you know, for people who are not photographers or not journalists, you know, oh, well, how can you do that? It's, you know, taking advantage. The people will think that. And what I have come to realize over the years is that when I have documented people who have, you know, lost family members from a school shooter, right? I've actually been thanked later because they said after it happened, all the attention was on the bad guy. And we felt like we were forgotten. And I feel like that's part of our job as journalists is to continue to document things. And how would people feel like if everybody just went home and didn't document it? Now that's different from your personal feelings about your home.
Right.
But that's an angle that I hadn't considered. When I first photographed these difficult things, I would get really upset and is this really my place? And then over the years, I've learned that for me, that I'm okay with it because I'm showing the world the tremendous impact that your, you know, earlier work had on a fellow going to jail, prison, is remarkable.
Right.
I'm curious, did the ATF, did they come to you and ask you for more images? Did you have an interaction with them personally? Did you ask to do anything with them?
Yeah, I definitely was expecting them to show up
Yeah.
and like take all my hard drives and stuff. So I had backed things up, and I've always been a little bit obsessed that like something was going to happen with my work, and I keep a full copy of my entire archive at my parents' house. So I sent that there, but they never came. So I guess they had enough evidence just without that. But to address your earlier point is, yeah, I think that like I've had that question, like, well, why am I not like helping put the fire out? You know, why am I documenting? But like someone needs to document it, and you know, like I'm not a firefighter. Like, I mean, if it's something I can, like, I put a fire out across the street as I left my house the final time, and that house survived. But like it was just a little spot fire. I mean, I'm not going to risk myself to put out a fire. But yeah, somebody has to do it, and like I feel like the more I've been doing this, like the more comfortable I've gotten in that role of realizing I should be there to document it.
Anyone else? Well, Kevin, I really want to thank you for being our eyes in these events. And, your work has always been really amazing, whatever it's light or fire or smoke. But this story in particular is crazy and amazing. And congratulations on the beautiful book. And we hope you stay safe and your family recovers in a way that everyone finds some peace.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for coming.